Good morning, Intenders.
Good morning.
Welcome back to Morning Intentions. Today is Monday, November 24th, and we hope you had a lovely weekend and are ready to get started this Monday morning.
It's a big week with the holiday and lots of folks traveling, maybe family coming in or going to see friends. So this is going to be a good time for us all to give to ourselves.
And to check in with our whys. Because we are moving from hustle to heart. Maybe you can check in and find out what's your why for even traveling. Are you hustling for your worth? Or do you have an authentic why full of meaning and purpose? Again, there's always no judgment. We're building awareness to why we do what we do. If we're coming from fear, if we're coming from we need to prove ourselves, we can always adjust. We can always make changes. And also, what I have found throughout this month and from last month is that when I've checked in with my why, I've put it into words, it gave me stronger meaning and purpose in what I'm already doing. I became more committed to what I do.
So I was at the grocery store last week. This concept, many people have never even heard of. The young man who was helping me bag my groceries, and then he said, "Would you like me to help you out?" And I thought, well, I bought a lot. Yeah, sure, you could help me out. We started talking, and he was telling me how he had gone to welding school, and he'd done this and he'd done that. But he didn't know really what to do with his life, and he was 23. And I said, well, have you heard of starting with your why? And I told him about Simon Sinek's book, and then I expanded it just a little bit. And we were maybe out by my car a little too long, but we had a really nice conversation. And at the end, he said to me, I never have ever thought about starting with why. And then he said, I have no idea what my why is. So when you think about career choices, when you think about how we're going to show up, maybe with family this week, what is our why? It's so important. And this month has taught me that it's even more important than I ever knew it was. Because we've talked to our clients about, well, you got to start with why, know your why. This month has shown me that it is even more important than I thought it was. So I love where we're at with Start With Why, where we're going from hustle to heart. And then we have gotten to the part on our journey together where we are thinking about meaning, purpose, authenticity. And last week, if everyone remembers, kind of get back into it, we talked about silencing our inner critic. When we silence our inner critic, the first step, we said, was to bring awareness to our inner critic. Some of us have had this voice in our head so much, so loud, that we don't even realize that that's our inner critic. If our inner critic is showing up and saying that we're not enough, that we didn't do this right, that we didn't do that right, we should have said the other thing, we've made a mess of our life, that's fear. And we want to move from fear to love. And the first step on that journey of fear to love is to bring awareness to how powerful our inner critic has been in our lives.
If you remember from basically all of this month, I've expressed little tidbits of my own inner critic, such as when I mentioned, well, when I read a book, there's part of me that says, well, is this the right book you should be reading? Does this add productive value to your life? Maybe I should read this other book instead. And then I start reading that one. And then the same little voice in my head says, well, is this the right book you should really be reading, Ada? And then that train of thought just can drive me a bit wild and crazy. But that's my inner critic talking. It's the part of me that says, no, you're not doing the right thing. You should be doing something different, something more. If you were doing things right, you wouldn't feel this way. And that's just an example of what our inner critic can sound like. It's all those times when we're trying to go with our hearts. It's saying to us, no, 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 hold on. You should be hustling for your worth. But the answer isn't to fight that inner critic and try to drive against it. And we see this over and over in coaching where we can even try not to feel something. We can just power through, we can suppress it, we can push it down. What happens then, though, is that inner critic and our feelings just become more powerful, so we'll finally listen. We don't want to fight this stuff. We want to give it some attention, give it the air it deserves. We don't need to follow through with it and do what it says. But we listen with authenticity, we listen with compassion and empathy, and you'll find, because the people, and Annette, maybe you want to chime in here, who fight their feelings and fight that little voice inside them, it doesn't go away, does it?
No, and I'm learning at this ripe old age.
Ripe old age?
Ripe old age of 64. I mean, I'm not in my 50s, 40s, 30s,
You're
20s.
no spring chicken.
I'm no spring chicken. And yet, what I'm learning when I allow those feelings to be recognized and I sit with my feelings, and I used to just not like it at all when people would say, well, you just have to sit with your feelings. And I would think, oh my goodness.
I would tell you that.
I know. And I would say, oh my goodness. And when we learned NVC and we started bringing that into our lives, what I'm recognizing just now, like the last month or so, is that when I brought NVC in, it was a gift to my life because I was allowed to feel my feelings and I didn't have to be afraid of my feelings. And yet there was this part of me that didn't want to spend too much time thinking about my feelings. I didn't want to spend too much time. Oh, what am I feeling? Find 3 feelings. Oh my goodness, really? And so I would struggle. And then as we taught this to our clients and we saw how it was helpful, then it really helped me to open myself up as, okay, feeling our feelings and recognizing our feelings is really important. But I was still hanging on to an idea in my mind. I don't want to spend too much time with these darn feelings, especially thinking about things from the past or hurtful events or maybe grief, loss. What I'm learning is what we wanted to share today. All I need is a small, little, tiny willingness to feel the feeling, literally feel it in my body, and allow it to show itself. And even grief will only last about 20 minutes. Some of these intense feelings we have, or maybe not so tense feelings that we have, but we push them down so then they eventually become intense. What I'm finding is if I give myself an opportunity, remember what we talked about with the guest house poem, if I allow those feelings to come in and be a guest, they really don't stay forever. In fact, once you notice them and allow them to show themselves,
and you name them,
they kind of go away. And that doesn't mean that they don't come back, because I'm going to say something like grief. Loss will probably always come back in some form. But the idea of I'm going to grieve and I'm going to get rid of all of these feelings, that's not a realistic human experience. It's more, I'm learning to feel what I feel, give them a name. That's why NVC is so valuable. And feel them in our bodies. And then once we're able to do that, what I'm finding is they don't stay that long. They are not guests that outstay their welcome.
No, they're not residents.
No.
They're guests.
They're guests. What's so wonderful about this is as you practice feeling your feelings with that little willingness, you don't have to jump right in. You can say, okay, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to try this. Little willingness, remember? Little willingness, you will find that you start to feel lighter and lighter as you give notice to your feelings and allow them to show themselves.
And our inner critic is the exact same way. If we give it space, we witness it, we take its power away. The more we try to suppress it and push it down, just like our feelings, that's actually what gives them more power than they have. When we witness our feelings, when we witness that inner critic, we allow it to say its piece, we allow it to be guests in our mind, and then when we take that power away, we can say, well, that was interesting, and we can move on from it. The more you fight the inner critic, the stronger it becomes.
And the moving on from it, you're lighter. You don't feel as though you're carrying all of this with you.
Correct.
On your back.
That's right.
And in your mind. So we'll continue this tomorrow, but I think this is a wonderful way to even begin the holidays, because there's always heavy feelings with the holidays. Not all of them are challenging and bad. Some people will say, oh gosh, the holidays. But some of them can just be, oh, I used to see my grandma, or I used to see my mom, and now I don't get to. And allowing yourself to have a little time to say, okay, I'm not going to see my mom, and I'm going to feel how that is. And then you have more of yourself to take through your day. And with the inner critic, if you start thinking about maybe things that you did wrong, remember we talked about self-forgiveness, you did wrong, or you allowed people to misbehave and treat you poorly. Well, all we need is that little willingness to think about the situation, acknowledge your feelings, and then move on. And you will naturally move on. You'll know when, okay, I have felt this enough. Now I'm ready to keep going.
Let's make that our intention for today. I will think about a situation. I will feel my feelings until they dissipate and go away on their own.
That doesn't mean that they won't come back at another time, but the more we're willing to live this intention, the less intense those feelings will be.
Again, we'll think of a situation, we'll acknowledge our feelings until they dissipate and we can move on. Thank you so much for joining us today and every day. Our day is better because you are part of our day. See you tomorrow.
See you then.